really had to rush through the end.
On time. Welcome to, what is this, Apple Canyon?
Apple Canyon Lake Watershed.
Okay, good. I didn't even know where I was. I'm Janet Eggleston. I'm one of the Rotarians, and I just got volunteered to do the introductions in here in this breakout session. So, we have Paula McFeely Wiener, and she is the chair of the Apple Canyon Lake Conservation Committee. She's been actively involved in the watershed planning process for the last 2 years. She's been a property owner since 2012, and although not a full-time resident, she's deeply committed to improving the water quality for everyone in the Apple Canyon Lake watershed. She is a licensed clinical social worker. She's employed by the National Parkinson Foundation as an information specialist. So we're glad to have Paula here, and then Darryle Burmeister.
Yes, ma'am.
And he's a full-time resident of Apple Canyon Lake for the last 25 years. He's a member of the Conservation Committee and has been involved in many conservation-related projects, including the North Bay Prairie Project, stream bank stabilization, lake riprap, greenway stewardship, and the Apple Canyon Lake Watershed Plan. He volunteered for the Illinois Lake Volunteer Monitoring Program for 15 years. After retirement, he was employed by the Apple Canyon Lake property. And so we're glad to have you here too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
You're welcome, and somebody will take care of that.
Yeah, if you just leave that on the table, we will take care of that.
Sure enough.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
We're going to start out with a disclaimer. We're not scientists. We're not mathematicians, okay? The gentleman that was going to present here, Mike Mallon, is really the author of this plan, so to speak, but he has gone to work for the Army Corps of Engineers and only has 1 day a week with soil and water in Joe Davies any longer, so he volunteered us. And what you're going to get is our perspective as homeowners and as lay people and how this plan was developed and what it's doing. We're going to start out with what is a watershed. And as that gentleman this morning said, we're all in this water box, so we know what a watershed is. But most of the world out there has no idea what a watershed is. I've been chattering on about this for the last 2 years, and last month when my sister-in-law was out, she finally said, you know, I don't know what a watershed is. Now, she's got a degree in information technology. She's not, a 8th grade dropout. But she's very typical of the people that we meet at many of the educational events. So a very simple way to explain a watershed is to say, think of it as an upside-down umbrella. And all the water that falls on that umbrella ends up down at the bottom of it. And people can picture that, and they can understand that. This is a more technical explanation of a watershed. Based on topography, all the water that falls on this particular piece of land ends up draining to a body of water. And that isn't exactly the way we look as a watershed, but it's a rough approximation. Oh, Darryle.
Just one thing, Paula, we said at the last meeting if people had questions, they could interject instead of waiting to the end, because we feel that by the time the end comes, you probably forgot the question, or it's a lot more relevant to answer as well as slides up there. What does the ACL watershed look like? Well, it looks like a big leaf, I guess. The 5 arrows there, starting at the very top, is North Bay of the lake. That's where Hell's Branch comes in, and that's the main contributor to the lake. And you can see all the little lines coming down. Those are all little spring branches, drainage ditches and stuff that feed into Hell's Branch. Going clockwise around on the right-hand side there is Winchester Bay. That is another small contributory that comes into the lake. And you can see the stuff that feeds into that one. The next one down is Washington Cove, is a small contributory. The next one is Independence, which is a fairly good-sized, it might be the third largest feeding into the lake. And the bottom one, straight down, that's Hell's Branch coming out of the lake. That's where the spillway's at. I don't know if any of you's been around that Canyon Lake, but that's one of the places where everybody stops to take pictures. So, and then on the left-hand side is President's Bay. As we go on, we'll probably talk a little bit more about President's Bay there. Well, this is a bigger picture of the lake. It shows the lake. That shows the properties around the lake. The border around the lake is actually the border around the watershed. If you look, folks that are familiar with Stagecoach Trail, it goes across the top there. You still property up on the left-hand top up there is similar right around to where Scales Mountain would be. It's the size of the watershed's around 10,000 acres. The lake is around 450 acres. It's got 15 miles of shoreline. And again, the Hell's Branch feeds it, comes out the bottom, feeds the Apple River. From the Apple River, we dump into the Mississippi River, which has been a lot talked about.
You're stealing my slide.
There's a topographical map that was did by an intern, and I can't tell you exactly, it's just been a few years ago. But at the very top, you can see where I was talking about North Bay. Off to the right is Winchester. To the right down here is Independence. The big slot in there would be where the marina's at, down at the bottom's the dam, and then President's Bay. You can see with a lot of our concern was siltation. That north end of the lake was never really deep anyway. So with all the siltation and stuff that we're getting and coming in, it's very important to us to try to keep that out of there. We have areas down in the lower end down here, we have a lot of water that's in 20, 30 feet deep. We have areas that are 60 feet deep. So it's a very deep lake.
And even though Darryle stole my slide, the importance, and you probably figured that out from this morning's talk, is we're a subwatershed. What happens to us then feeds into Apple River, which then feeds into the Mississippi River, which then feeds into the Gulf of Mexico. So if we can make a change at Apple Canyon Lake, that change will work its way down and affect what even goes on in the Gulf of Mexico. Oops. That didn't happen earlier. This is a new computer, guys, so you have to bear with me. I think this is really important, and I don't usually read slides, but I'm going to read this one. All watersheds are living, breathing systems full of interrelationships that connect soil, water, plants, and animals to each other. The living parts of the watershed range from tiny plants and animals in the lakes that support large and small fish to the rich soil that allows plants and crops to grow. Because of all the interrelationships, watersheds are complex systems that can be healthy or fragile depending on the balance between the individual parts. And this morning we heard so much about all the individual parts that are involved and how difficult it can be. There is no one answer. So, water in for our lake. That's a picture of Hell's Branch coming into, if you look farther back, that's North Bay back there. And then this is the spillway, the water coming back out. Great, right? Everything's peachy. The lake fills up, the lake drains out, everybody's happy. So what's the problem? This is the problem. The slide on the left shows that Hell's Branch after a heavy rain. As you can see, it has overflowed its banks. And it's not only overflowed its banks, but it looks a lot like that. And it's carrying all that siltation. It's going at quite a clip, so it makes its way into North Bay, but then it starts to slow down. And as it slows down, the siltation drops out and starts to fill in North Bay. The shallower North Bay gets, the more sunlight penetrates, the more plants grow. Pretty soon you don't really have a useful water area. You've kind of got this mushy mess of plants and silty ground, and the property owners up there don't like that at all. They get very angry. The other thing that happens is you have the stream bank erosion. When stream banks erode, the stream can no longer flow out and reach the natural floodplain. It gets tied in tighter and tighter, deeper and deeper erosion, faster and faster movement. So do we have a solution? Boy, we have 3 inches of solution. That is the actual Apple Canyon Lake Watershed plan that you see laying on the table. And no, the plan itself isn't that thick. We actually have a sample of the draft plan up on the table, but that includes all of the data that's been collected and used to develop the plan. So Darryle, how did we get to this 3 inches of watershed plan?
Well, we had meetings and decided that we needed to maintain the lake quality and improve it, and also improve the quality of the water that we're sending downstream. Mike Milan wrote the grant application for us. We held meetings at the Apple Canyon Clubhouse with all people that would be interested in the watershed, including the farming community, business folks, property owners, people from the county that were in the soil and water. It was open to the public. We had, after every session, we had just broke out into groups and people discussed their feelings, I guess you want to call it, and their ideas. They put those ideas together, and then we gathered data and had more data and gathered more data, and that consisted of water monitoring, stream monitoring, and all that stuff put together. And then they analyzed the data, and then they submitted it to the EPA, and I think we got it back one time, didn't we?
We got it back once.
We got it back once, and we had to, fine tune it. And Mike did all this. So, I mean, I'm just talking from what my experience of it was. So, but anyway, then we got a watershed plan.
3 inches of watershed plan. Oop.
What did we measure? Well, I've been involved in this. If they just told you, been doing water monitoring, voluntary lake monitoring for the EPA for the state of Illinois. I was a volunteer for 15 years, and I took over from a lot of the folks in here in the last meeting, Mr. Frank Loftus. He did it way before me. Actually, he did it before there was Illinois volunteer lake monitoring. He was doing monitoring way before that. So we have records of water clarity and things that go backward to 1984. In the 90s, then we started doing it with BLMP. We measured water temperature, dissolved oxygen, total phosphorus, dissolved phosphorus, and like I told the folks in here before, I was the volunteer, and it kind of went from, well, there's a tier 1, 2, and 3. And we started out at tier 1, which was just water clarity. The state gave us, once I got more trained in that, then we went to a tier 2. We eventually went to a tier 3, and that's when we started doing all the water sampling. And we did that at 3 sites in the lake. And we did phosphorus, chlorophyll, nutrients. And the state of Illinois, then we'd send all those water samples into the state of Illinois, and they process them. You got the reports back. So this is where we got a lot of the data over the years. So we can go back and look at charts for water clarity, go back, way back in the 90s to see. And one of the folks in here asked a question about if I thought that it actually got better. And actually, if you go back and look way back, it's had its peaks and its declines, excuse me. But I would say it definitely has not got worse. It's pretty much boils out with weather and everything, pretty much stays the same. Mike Milan, he had some interns plus himself, and also we got a bunch of data from water monitoring from the streams coming into the lake also. So we've got a good vast amount of information.
So you collect all this data, what do you do with it? There are actual mathematical equations, which Darryle and I don't even vaguely understand. And Mike said he didn't understand them either, so I think it's probably okay. But he did know how to put the numbers in to the equations to come out with the actual loads. So from these measurements of smaller areas, you can actually project a whole year's worth of phosphorus or nitrates or solids coming into your body of water. And that's what we did. If you look to the left, you see that there are sub-watersheds within our watershed. And we looked at each one of those, and we looked at the nitrogen load, the phosphorus load, and the sediment load, and quickly saw that North Bay and Winchester Bay are our big problem areas. And those are the areas where we want to concentrate our efforts, because we will literally get our biggest bang for our buck if we work in those areas. And you can see the totals down at the bottom.
Hold on up there, Winch.
Okay.
I mentioned earlier when we started out about President Day that I was going to mention that.
That's right.
The purple over here on the side, on the left-hand side, is President's Bay. I told a bunch of people, and I probably took up too much time the last time, but this is not our first go-around with working in our watershed. Dan Reimer was here. I'm sure a lot of you people know Dan. Dan was our general manager at one time, and he was very instrumental in working with the farming community, and we had all kinds of people doing buffer strips. We did dry dams. We did all kinds of stream bank stabilization. President's Bay, Mr. Keister owns the property up there, and Dan worked with Mr. Keister and the association for quite some time, and we built it's probably about 2 acres maybe, pond up there, and it collects all that runoff coming down off the left-hand side there into that pond, holds it there as long as it can, unless it's just an enormous rainfall, and then it'll go to the top. And then it goes under the road, so even we did work around the road to spread the water out before it went under. And then we did all kinds of stream bank stabilization. We changed the stream's angle coming into the lake and put a silk curtain at the end of that yet. I think Dan was here in the first, we figured was there about 15 years. We've already emptied it one time, and we've already had to clean out behind the silk curtain. So that's one of the reasons that purple's in there, that we did that much work that made that big a difference. Or I think that particular area would probably look like Winchester or North Bay.
Well, it doesn't have the length of the tributaries going through it either.
Well, no.
If you compare it to the North Bay tributary.
Right.
I mean, that's going way up.
Yeah, that goes way up.
Parallel to Watson Road all the way up to Roberts Road.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot bigger area there.
Yeah.
And we have did properties up in that area. There's a gentleman that owns property at the lake, and he owns property up farther up P Ridge there and back up in that creek area. We did stream bank stabilization and buffer strips and stuff on the creek up there years and years ago. So this isn't something, I guess I'm trying to say, we're just starting now. It's something that we've been working at for quite some time. Thank you.
So the plan actually has 4 goals, and Darryl's going to talk to us about, or tell us what each of the 4 goals are, and then we're going to look at them individually and the objectives that are set to meet those goals.
Well, improve water quality. We want to improve the water quality, and by doing that, we want to reduce the runoff, which adds heavy siltation loading to the lake, which in turn increases your nutrients and phosphorus into the lake, which in turn feeds the algae blooms and fills up the lake and makes it a lot easier for, like Paula said earlier, for the photosynthesis to get down there, so you get aquatic vegetation growing. And that's one of the big reasons we want to do there. We want to make sure that we're existing flooding problems. We want to try and do some work, especially in Winchester. Winchester it's a heavily wooded area. It has a area that it's right along the highway, and it needs a lot of work too, with stream bank stabilization. It needs to be cleaned up. Probably need to get some grasses and stuff in there. Educate the watershed community. Paula's since she's been our co-chairman, she's been very adamant about pushing all us folks on the conservation committee about writing articles and stuff and we have an apple core at the lake that goes out monthly. So she's very adamant about, and she does a great job of writing them herself, but we do a lot of articles on the watershed, we do articles on the fishery, we do, anything that's pertains to conservation, we try to keep getting it in front of people so they got something to look at.
It's really easy. Just once a month, I take them each out and I beat them severely, tell them they have to do something, and then hopefully they go out and do it. Now we're going to look at each one of the goal. Those were the goals. Now we're going to look at the objectives. This is the way that we can reach those goals. Prioritize and stabilize stream banks. The prioritize is the big difference between what we've done in the past and what we're going to do now. Mike went through and he found what would be termed the hot spots, the stream banks that are really in bad shape and are contributing heavily to the problem. So now we know, okay, these are the ones we have to do first. Maybe we want to eventually try to get to all of them, but the ones that are causing the big problem need to be addressed first. Stabilizing eroded shoreline. We've actually been doing this for a long time. We started our riprap program in 2001, and riprapping, for those of you that don't know, and believe me, I didn't know when I moved out there, because in Wisconsin we don't call it riprapping, it's rocking the shoreline. But here it's riprapping, and that's putting rocks along the shoreline and high enough that you keep that wave action that comes from the lake from eroding the shoreline into the lake. The association puts forth a certain amount of money in their budget every year to do riprapping around the lake. Our lake is maybe a little bit different than the Territories Lake or Lake Carroll's Lake. The vast majority of our shoreline is not privately owned. It's still held by the association. So we have a responsibility for that. But we've offered the lakefront property owners, the chance to piggyback when the riprap company is out there. If they want to riprap their shoreline, they get a cheaper price because all the equipment's out there already, the barge, the rocks, all the rest of that stuff. And so they can get a lesser price. And I think last year we riprapped 1,000 feet and private property riprapped 1,050 feet. So we actually doubled our hit by making that program available to them, and we will do that in all coming years.
Question,
Yes?
do you envision the entire lake being rip-wrapped or just
I
12
don't-
spots?
I don't know if we would riprap the entire lake.
I would say excluding parts of, maybe some parts of North Bay and some parts of Winchester. Yeah, I can see it eventually pretty much being all riprap, because there's property owners out there that probably built homes and brought property out there 25 years ago that their stakes are out in the lake now, probably. The base of the lake, and we were talking about it later, is mostly sandstone. So even if it's not boat traffic, wind, freezing and thawing this time of year just takes a terrible action against the shoreline out there. Because those rocks are so soft that they're soaked up with water. You get 10 below zero weather, they freeze, they expand, when they thaw, there they lay. You know, so that's one of the things in doing riprapping too. You just don't go to any quarry around here and get stone to riprap. You gotta have a good quality, hard stone that's gonna hold up over the years. Otherwise, it's like they make gravel, what they make gravel out of. Well, why is a gravel road? Why ain't it 40 feet high? Because they keep putting gravel on. Well, it's because it's turning into dirt, and it's going down the stream too. But yeah, so that I would eventually, our goal for Greenway is to riprap everything. Yes.
Thank you.
The Riverwatch Data Program, we're going to host a Riverwatch training in June out at Apple Canyon Lake. It's going to be open to the community. I hope some of you will consider becoming Riverwatch volunteers. I've never done it before, but I'm going to do it because really I wanted to be a biologist, and I don't know, I think it's because I flunked chemistry, and so, you know, couldn't go any further. But the idea of getting into the lake and collecting all these little microvertebrates and putting them in jars is just, it's exciting. And it's only a one-day, well, it's a two-day commitment. You have to go to the training, and then you have to do your Riverwatch work. So it's really minimal, and it happens once a year. But I hope some of you will consider coming to the training, and we'll have it publicized in the newspapers in the community. Cost-sharing program for best management. Again, we've done that with farmers in the past, but now we want to target it for the areas that are causing the biggest problems. And the septic inspection policy, some poor intern is going to come to us this summer, and he or she is going to spend the entire summer in the Joe Davies County offices checking septic records. Now, talk about a boring internship. But that's what and we will have those records, and we'll be able to see, because the septic building codes have changed since Apple Canyon Lake was constructed. And we want to see where everybody is in terms of their field and its compliance and all the rest of it. So we definitely want to look at that.
Just to add to that, Paul, we do have a septic inspection program that started quite a few years now. And what we're actually doing is not like we never had one. We're upgrading, hopefully to upgrade it. So,
How many of your owners are inoculating their septic tanks at least once a year with a material that's a natural material that breaks everything down?
cannot answer that.
No idea.
Cannot answer that.
Well, a related comment to that point is, I don't know the numbers, but I'm going to speculate in the Galena territory that there are probably 80% of the homeowners who do not understand what a septic system is.
I can do that.
They live in the big city. There's a big sewer sanitation department. They take care of all the shit. And they don't understand that the system that they have in their property in Joe Davis County does not do that. And so there's no appreciation of how do I maintain and repair the system. That's a fact. So
John, I don't think it has anything to do with urban American people coming in here. I think it has to do with most people don't maintain their septic system,
well, the reason
whether
is,
you're rural or urban.
well, the reason is they're not accustomed to it. When I grew up, we didn't have a septic system. We had outhouses. And then when we got septic systems, the people that put them in began to understand, because they already had the outdated system, that they had to maintain it. When you live in the city of Chicago, where a lot of your people come from, they just don't understand what that is, and that's the problem. That's where it's at.
Well, when we.
And for that matter, there are a lot of farmers that don't understand it
Well, there's a lot of
too.
farmers that had the overflow pipe.
I
going down
know.
the ditch going right down by the milk house.
That's the point I was making, John. Yeah.
That was our firm.
Sure. I can tell you when we originally started the septic program at Apple Canyon Lake, I was actually working there then after I had retired, but I guess I wasn't retired, but I went back to work. But anyway, we found multiple systems that weren't working at all.
And here's the other side. Here's the educational catch. When I moved out here in 1979, when I built my house in 1979, I think the cost of the septic system for the property that I had was like $1,500 to $3,000. To replace a septic system today, it's a $20,000 investment.
And that's because they figured out that the systems that we put in originally weren't all that great.
And the standards are increased, and so.
Right, yeah, I agree with you 100%. So anyway, that's what we're doing with that, is hopefully we're gonna upgrade it. And at the time they did that too, they GPSed the fields, which was, I don't know, it was okay, but some of them were done pretty. So there's room for improvement, I'll put it that way.
Okay, you got algal blooms.
Algae blooms, excessive chronic plant growth. Well, I think I got something about that. Well, algae blooms, well, I mentioned it before, when you get a high nutrient count and you get high phosphorus and you get the right weather, you're gonna get nutrient blooms. I mean, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago when we had a pretty dry summer? I mean, there was major lakes all over the United States that were closed down because of toxic algae. We have, in my existence as Apple Canyon Lake, we've never reached that. And Mike and I were contacted, the association manager was, and we went out and took numerous water samples for people that were insistent that they had toxic algae, which tested it wasn't. So, yeah, so that's,
Tell them what Jeannie did this summer.
pardon me?
Tell them what Jeannie did this summer.
Oh, Jeannie, yeah, Jeannie, last summer, Jeannie, we've been very fortunate, and we've mentioned this probably, I don't know how many times today, and I don't know how many people picked up on it, but we've been very fortunate to have interns, and we've had them from, and Jeannie was from University of, one of the Michigan schools, I'm not sure, but she spent all summer at Apple Canyon Lake, and what she did is, she went out in the boat every day, identified all the aquatic vegetation, mapped it, identified it, and so we got all that information to work with. too. So we know if we got exotic species, and we know if we got good aquatic life and all that too. So yeah, so that was a great deal, and we've been very fortunate with that. Another thing with the blooms and stuff, we have a Adopt a Greenway program, and what that is property owners that have greenway attached to their property, behind their property, beside their property, they can apply through the Conservation Committee and ask permission to go in there and clean that up. And I'm sure a lot of you folks got the same situations. And when they built Apple Canyon Lake, we were very protective of the greenway. We didn't want anybody touching anything. Well, over the years, with people, with things happening that they tried, later Paula's going to show you a slide, how you do things and you assess it and you monitor it. Well, there was a time when people thought Russian olive and wild honeysuckle was a great thing to plant. Well, now we got that stuff everywhere. So what it does, if you're not familiar with it, it grows up and everything underneath it's bare. So it kills everything. We got, and then you got the garlic mustard. Everybody knows what garlic mustard is. So we're doing those programs, coming in, eradicating that in that particular area, going in, and hopefully we're putting in wild grasses, prairie grasses, which the gentleman up there today said, don't look for what's above the ground, look what's below the ground and how that works. So that's another program, and that's hopefully will affect all these things up here too.
That's you too.
Increased connectivity between streams and floodplains. Hell's Branch, I mentioned a couple times, feeds Apple Canyon Lake. And that's where the North Bay restoration area was at too, and it still is. We have a very large silt pond up there. I know that Galena Territories here does some dredging. We have our own dredge. So that's where when we dredge in North Bay, we dredge the silt into that pond. Well, Hell's Branch runs right down alongside of it. You're very familiar with it. On the north side of the road there, we used to have probably a, acre and a half, 2 acre pond. And we figured out that the water was coming down in a big rainstorm. Well, it was forcing it all against a high bluff over there and right down through there. And it was actually getting close to where it was affecting the road bridge. So we took that pond out of there and we excavated it, hauled the dirt off to another site. We used the dirt for other programs at the lake. And what that did, as soon as that water came into that area, it could fan out over probably a 4 to 5 acre span and get away from that high surge, and that helped a lot. And we're in this program too. I know we need to address the silt pond up there yet too. And that slide that Paula showed you about the erosion at Hell's Branch, that's a lot of that there because it funnels that water all down into such a narrow area, and it just picks up velocity and it just washes and washes and washes. Okay.
Want to talk just for a moment about the last two things, because this is something that, although it's in the plan, is not going as well as maybe we'd like it to. If you attended this morning's presentations, you saw what it would basically take to do zero runoff. Even though his house didn't have zero runoff, he certainly improved it. But it took a lot of work, and it took a variety of things, not just a rain barrel, not just a roof garden, not just the pavers. And in order to make a zero runoff policy, we would have to change the construction documents. And so far, the chairman of the architecture committee who has the same last name as me, strangely enough, but doesn't listen to a word I say, has not been real gung-ho about doing that. And it wouldn't just be the architecture committee. I mean, this would have to go in front of the board too. And they are even reticent to allow us to build bigger garages and asking people to have zero runoff. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if we're going to get that or not. But we're going to keep on trying. And encouraging the zero runoff adherence for existing properties, we've done that through a number of educational articles. We've talked about rain barrels. We've talked about rain gardens. We're trying to make it as easy as we possibly can for people, because even if you do one small thing, you've done something that you weren't doing before, and that can have an effect. The last goal is to educate the community, and this is really where our committee has been tasked with. Almost everything here belongs to our committee. Increasing public participation means doing a better job of getting everybody interested and involved in the process. Getting the word out when we're having a watershed meeting and making it valuable. Like I'm finding today's meeting extremely valuable. I'm learning stuff all the time. We need to make our watershed meetings valuable, and then people will want to come. Demarcate the watershed boundaries. We've done that, and you'll see that at the end of the presentation. We now have official signs that say, you are entering Apple Canyon Lake watershed. Publish educational articles. We have a monthly publication called the Apple Core that I referred to earlier, and the Conservation Committee, as Darryle said, we run articles every month. We try to have something about the watershed at least every other month, or bring it up in the article that we're doing. We try to cover a variety of things, not only the watershed, but fishery, fish habitats. For November, I did an article on turkeys, of course. We have a lot of wild turkeys out there. But we try to keep it in front of the community. Now, do they read the Apple Core? Who knows? I can't put the paper in their hand and point at the articles, but we can do them and get them in front of there. The educational events, these have been kind of fun. We've had a watershed table at most of our major events, things like our pancake breakfast and our ice cream social. We have a thing called Farm Days, where the kids come, and it's not just our kids from Apple Canyon Lake, it's open to the entire community. And we had cows and baby pigs, and they made ice cream, and there was all kinds of different activities going on. And I had a really hokey watershed demonstration. I had a plastic box with rocks in it and a spray bottle. And I would ask them, okay, I'm going to spray here. Where do you think the water's going to go? And the idea was to show them how that water found its way down the rocks and ended up in the bottom, what represented Apple Canyon Lake. I also came up with some of these worksheets for them to take with them. And there are samples on the table if you want to take one. It's fine. I didn't think you all needed one, so I didn't make official handouts. This I made for the little kids. It's a watershed coloring sheet, and it shows what a watershed is and then the types of things that we find in our watershed. And I, believe it or not, many of the adults were stopping and saying, oh, is that what a watershed is? Didn't know. This was a real struggle, but I got that chairman of the architectural committee, who's an architect, to draw a picture of our watershed. And the older kids really liked this and took this with them. And I told a little story in the first session. You know, kids can have a huge influence on us as parents. I remember when my daughter was maybe 6 or 7, and I was brushing my teeth, and of course I had the water running like I always did. And she walked into the bathroom and said, "Mom, you're wasting water." And I said, "Huh?" And she said, they said on Sesame Street, you shouldn't leave the water running when you're brushing your teeth. Well, you know what? I have never left the water running when I'm brushing my teeth since that day. And it was because Sesame Street told her that they shouldn't do it, and she told me. So that's why we have aimed some of our efforts at the kids. And hopefully they will go home and aim their efforts at their parents. We did the little drawing of do you live in the Apple Canyon Lake watershed so they could identify where they were. And then although I did this for the kids, it was the parents that took them. We have a watershed animal scramble and a watershed crossword puzzle. And we did run the watershed crossword puzzle in the paper too, as well. Oh, and the answers are on the back. And Darryle.
I insisted on that.
Darryle, tell them about Kids Club.
Pardon my what?
Kids Club.
What?
Tell them about Kids Club.
Oh, Kids Club. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Well, it's been going on for several years, and we have a recreational director at the lake that does, I think, a wonderful job in finding stuff for young folks to do. We have a lot of things. They have fishing tournaments for the little ones. But anyways, it goes along with this farm day thing, but it's on a different day. And it's a kids camp. And they come to the lake, mom and dad drops them off. They go in groups by age, so you don't have 11, 12-year-olds with 7-year-olds. And they have a series of stations. And Mike and Jeannie and myself, we had one of the stations. And what we did was we went out in the lake. Mike and Jeannie jumped over the boat. I didn't. I couldn't get back in. But they took a net. They got some crawfish. They got some small bluegills. And if you, and I went and got I just take a 5-gallon bucket. And it's really a cool thing to do. And you can take a garden rake if you can't get in the lake or something. And just grab some vegetation out of the lake and put a little bit of water in, but you don't need a lot. And just let it sit there for, it's kind of like the river watch thing. Leave it sit there for 10, 15 minutes and let the little ones go over and start pawing through there, and they'll come out with snails, they'll come out. The life in there is just, it's mind-boggling how much stuff is in there, and they just enjoy the heck out of that. We had some crawdads. Of course, they wanted to pick the crawdads up and get bit, And then I did a thing with, I took my boat down and I got it in the lot there, and Jeannie and I, we did a little bit of thing on invasive species. I don't know how many of you folks have been in programs with invasive species, but talking zebra mussels, Eurasian milfoil, different things that are transported from one body of water to the other. Well, most of the states now have put laws into place if they pull you over alongside the road and you got your plug in your boat or your bilge pump, and if you got water in there, they can arrest you. You cannot transport fish live in a live well anymore. If you got any vegetation on your boat, and if they decide to pull you over and check when you're going into another body of water, they can arrest you. Minnesota, Wisconsin have been doing this for quite some time. So anyway, to make a long story short, Illinois got the same laws now. But anyway, we took and hid some pieces of grass and vegetation out of the lake around the boat, and the little ones would go and try to find it, And so it was a thing to teach the kids to say when they went back home, hey, Mom and Dad, when you pull that boat out, you got a weed under and you can't do that, And that's, I think, I don't know, if I look around this room, there's a lot of full-grown adults in here. And I don't think we're going to be able to carry this program through to, you know what I'm saying? I'm thinking we need the young ones to get going there and educate young folks and get them interested in what's going on. And we're very, very lucky to have, I see a couple of young guys sitting in here, And we're very lucky to have people that are coming on board and interested in going to school for this stuff and going on. And the other thing I want to say is with all the stuff we're doing with Apple Canyon Lake, we certainly have in mind of our people downstream. You know, that's a whole thing of it too. I mean, it might sound kind of selfish that we want to make everything better for ourselves, but that's not the only thing we do.
Not at all.
When you use the term community, are you talking about those who live in the Apple Canyon Lake properties?
Yes.
How many people in the watershed who are not Apple Canyon residents, how many are there?
Can't tell you.
So you can work
I mean,
your...
they're welcome to all our stuff. We're not excluding anybody, you know.
But the concentration that you're talking about here deals really with the Apple Canyon Lake. But how do you protect yourself from the other people who live in the watershed who are not doing anything or very little, and that's a contribution of nutrient pollution and sedimentation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that impacts you in the lake?
John, he described a bunch of stuff that they're doing up on the stream that flows into the North Bay.
Yeah, we've
Numerous projects.
Yeah,
over the
we
years,
have
right?
probably, over the years, we've probably had upwards of 60, 70 projects with people that are in the watershed that are doing things. And we're also, all these meetings that put this plan together that Paula showed you that was 3 inches thick, have all designed to have everybody in the watershed and contribute and put in their, if you want to call it, their 2 cents worth or whatever you want to say. So, I guess when I talk about a community, I might lean a little bit towards the ALC, but I didn't really, that's not my.
Oh, no, this is not a criticism, it's
No, I didn't take it that way.
it's a suggestion that
No, we've involved the farmers, and the farmers are involved. And part of the monies that we have set aside in our annual budget is cost sharing with the farmers to do best management practices. So you're absolutely right. If we don't get them on board, there's only so much that we can do within the boundaries of ACL. We need them. We need that cooperation. And we've been working, and I think they've been cooperating. Could we use more cooperation? Always. But they are there, and I think we'll get even more of them. We're talking to our general manager about having one of the next watershed meetings and inviting the guys who are presenting next door on cover crops to do a cover crop presentation at our watershed meeting, and opening that up not only to the farmers within Apple Canyon watershed, but to farmers within the whole county that might want to come and learn what a cover crop can do for them and why they might want to use one.
May I make another point about the North Bay watershed? I live in the area, John, and if you had that one slide of the North Bay and the watershed, there may be at the most 10 to 12 farmsteads that are feeding into that watershed going directly into the North Bay. It's very isolated there. So to invite and to do the projects you've been doing, it shows me that you're being very proactive.
I personally didn't make it to all the watershed meetings, but I was to several of them, and they were very well attended by folks that actually own property in the watershed and some folks that were renting land in the watershed. So they were very well attended, I thought. Now, was every meeting well attended? Probably not. And when you talk about people that are reluctant to do things, Paula and I have sat in meetings together, and as soon as we bring up a particular, well, what about that guy over there? Or what about that guy over there? You know, so you always got that to deal with. I mean, I don't know how I don't know how you solve that problem. I really don't.
Did you send them letters and kind of explain?
Yes, we sent out letters to all the property owners around, not actually the ACLO, POA property, but the people that had property in the.
Sean actually,
Farm.
Sean's our general manager. Sean did a dinner for the farmers. October, November? And individual letters were sent to each
And
property
invitation
owner
to come.
to come to the
Did
dinner.
you have a good turnout, do you know?
You know, it was during the week, so I wasn't out there.
I didn't make it.
The other education thing that we're going to do this year that's kind of fun, and honestly, I think Darryle and I were amazed when the board actually gave us the money, because it's hard to get money out of the board. We're going to do a demonstration project of buffer strips. And we're going to do 3 different types of buffer strips. We're doing it right near the Cove restaurant, which it's a very high traffic, boat traffic area. And it's going to show people how easy it is to put a buffer strip on your property. And why you would want to continue to cut all that lawn grass, I can't even imagine. But they've given us
I don't remember what it was, but it was several $1,000s.
I think it's $10,000.
I think it's
$10,000 to do the demonstration project. So that's, we were really kind of amazed, because, you know, as a board, you're always trying to keep those costs under control, not raise the association dues, give people the most for their money. But I think this board is really behind us on the watershed plan, and this was one way that they were able to really demonstrate that. Go ahead. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to ask you anything. This is really going to be the key to the success of this program. And as I said to the group earlier, if any of you have ever worked in business, and I'm sure none of you ever have, and you've never had this problem, we have a problem and we assess it, right? Okay, we figure out what our problem is. We design a solution or an intervention, and then we put it into practice, and then it's all over. Does it work? I don't know. Should we do something different? I don't know. With this plan, we assess, we design solutions, we implement them, we monitor, which is basically collecting more data, we evaluate that data. Are we improving? Are we improving our nitrogen, phosphorus, and solid loads? If we're not, and we're doing what we planned, we better rethink this thing, because we're wasting our time, money, and energy. So then we need to adjust if that's the case. And then we go back and we assess again, and we keep doing that circle, and hopefully we keep seeing improvement over the years. We have a 5-year goal and we have a 10-year goal for reduction in those 3 areas. And I think if we can stick to it, and it's like anything else, it's like where you worked, your church, the United States government, leadership changes, priorities change. That's where these programs can fall down. And that's where we, hopefully, Darryle and I will live long enough, to continue to push this forward. Whether we get a new general manager, whether we get our board members can turn over every 3 years. That's how long they're elected for. And I think a certain 3 or 4 of them are up for election every year. So the nature of your board and the commitment of your board changes. And that's why it's so important to have some solid entity like the Conservation Committee that just keeps this thing going and in front of the people that can fund it and the people that can make a difference. And that's probably going to be true for all of you with whatever plan or program you do, unless it's your own house in your own backyard. Then you just got to drive yourself. But otherwise, you've got to keep interest and involvement. There's our signs. Aren't they cool? And it's really important for all of you to know that we could have never, ever, ever put this plan together without Mike Mellon. We don't have the expertise. We just don't have the time or energy to do it. Mike put a tremendous amount of work into this plan, and we were so blessed and fortunate to have him. That is it in a nutshell, but you guys can't leave because we have 3 questions that we are supposed to ask you. Do you guys, you can help yourself when it's over to any of the handouts that you want, if you want any of them. Does anybody have any questions on our presentation before we ask you the required questions?
How's the water quality when you monitor it at the beach? Are you using the same protocol at the beach that you do at the other bays? Because it's in a sheltered area there.
It's in a sheltered area.
Is there a lot of water moving through there at the beach?
Yes and no. It depends, like you said, it's sheltered, so you don't get much wind action or anything to push it in and out. In the summertime, you get more boat action. To be very honest with you, they a test over there for E. coli, and the beach has been shut down for E. coli for, sometimes several days, which it's been that way for, I guess, as long as I can remember, because I worked there in 2001 or something like that, and I know a couple of times that we had to shut it down because of E. coli. As far as clarity, algae, aquatic vegetation, it's we try to control that, and we use some chemical in there. And I hate to use that word, but I mean, sometimes you don't have any other alternatives. As long as it's used correctly, and I guess I don't have a problem with it as long as you use a lot of it.
2 related questions. Is the E. coli because of geese? And the other question is there a lake-wide goose management program?
We do. As far as
We would
pinpoint,
never hurt those baby geese.
to answer your question, or the E. coli, I can't say directly caused by geese. We have had some E. coli problems in a couple other bays that Mike has found, and I would probably think they were more due to cattle. I hate to even think about saying the farm word, but I'm thinking that was what. I guess it could be, but years ago we didn't really have that big a goose problem. We do have a goose deal in the spring, and we have permission from the DNR, and we have I think 2 or 3 people that have their name on it that are licensed to go out, and what they do is they find the nest and take the eggs and they spray them with Crisco oil. So yes, we do that. If you ask me if it's not 100%, I can tell you that. And them geese are smart, because where they used to put their nests years ago, they're not there anymore, but they're still geese. So they've figured out, they move back. It's amazing where you can find them. They'll move way back away from the water and nest. So they're pretty foxy and they're pretty smart. But yes, we do have a program, and we have had it for several years. Yes. But it is okayed by the DNR. It's not something that we're doing on our own. And I know at one time by working with some of the folks here at Galena Territory, they also had one too. And I'm guessing they probably still do. Yes. But to say that the E. coli was directly caused by the geese, I wouldn't doubt it, but I don't think there's any proof for that.
Can I have the question sheet?
I get to ask the question.
But I don't have anything to write
All
on,
right.
so.
The first question, I'm sorry, is there any other comments or questions before we have a sheet here we need to fill out for the folks, for the Rotary folks in a minute. First question on there is spread the word. How are you
guys going to spread the word?
How are you guys
after
going to
this
spread the
meeting?
word? comments?
Here's how I'm gonna spread the word. I'm gonna have a chat with Sean afterward. The UW Platteville Research Farm just received a $300,000 USDA grant. And it is to monitor the Galena River. The headwaters of the Galena River run through the research farm. So they've got a grant they're gonna use to monitor water quality. And they're factoring in that their dairy herd is contributing to runoff on the research farm that gets into the headwaters of the Galena River. Okay? Now, you folks, I think, need to be aware of how they're collecting data and what their research protocol looks like. Because it's my experience that there is at least one, maybe two groups of beef cattle that are on pasture that are adjacent to some of the tributaries in your watershed that comes into the North Bay. Yeah. So you might be looking at this material and thinking about sampling getting some water samples ahead of this pasture and below it before the water gets into the North Bay.
I'm going to put that on the growing collaboration.
Sure.
Because that would be a collaborative effort that we might be able to make with Platteville. How do we do this? How do we study
And in
this?
fact, Mike Malin, according to what he told me, many of his water samples were submitted to the UW Platteville laboratory for analysis.
Yeah,
So
because Mike has been taking
So
water
he-
samples in all the contributaries of.
So he had established a connection there through his good work.
Well, and he's, yeah, because like we had several interns from Platteville University that did, they did the old firehouse, they did the tower, they did a lot of different intern work, and they did presentations to the association, what they thought should be taken care of, upgraded, what the integrity of the building was, and so forth. So, yeah, we have a kind of a connection there, I guess you might want to say.
Any other ideas on how you guys are going to spread the word?
Who do you advertise through the local communities surrounding the area? Because I'd be interested in going to some of the events for the kids, take my kids to them.
We've got, and since I just made a connection with the editor of The Scoop, the paper out of Lena, we're going to be doing more through that. And hopefully he's going to open the door so that we can get into the Galena Gazette. And there's one other paper, isn't there?
The Flash.
The Flash. That we can do a better job of letting the community know when we're having these events and what we're doing.
Apple Canyon Lake also has a website that you can go on and yeah, and it gives you quite a bit of information. It'll tell you, if there's a big rainfall, if the lake is closed down, and it gives you all kinds of information on meeting schedules and all kinds of stuff like that. But I hear where you're coming from. We need to do a better job of communicating to
Different communities can take the information that you're applying to the Apple Canyon River, a lake, and apply it to their watersheds as well.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Anything else on spreading the word? Growing collaborations? How you can find other people to work with on what you want to do? We're going to fail filling in this question.
Well, it's late in the day.
It is. Focus action? Is there any action that you as an individual are going to take when you walk out of this conference this afternoon?
I think learning more about the river that you have presented sounds like something really good to do.
I had some more information here that I guess we kind of went over that pretty quick, but it's a very interesting thing to do. The River Watch program is it's designed to tell you the quality of your water by using microvertebrates, which are aquatic insects, easily. And there's a whole host of mayflies, sow bugs,
Right and left-handed snail.
snails, and they're all assigned a value of the water quality they can live in. You have leeches, bloodworms. So take a sow bug. I think it's I don't know. I wrote down. I have a whole list here. If you can take the list if you want. But a sow bug is a 6.0, which is pretty much perfectly water quality. A dragonfly is a 4.5. A hegemite is 3.5. So, and then like the bloodworm, a leech is 11 and an 8. So if you go into Hell's Branch and you do your river watch, you get in there and you get your little net, and there's more to it than that, but you kick around in the riffles and the water, and you get a nice net full of probably some stones, and you take that net full and you take it over here and you put it in a pan of like a cookie sheet. Everybody knows what a cookie sheet is, and it's white. So like I was talking about the vegetation in the 5-gallon bucket. So you leave it sit there for a while and you start moving things around, and all of a sudden these little critters start coming out of all these holes and rats, and so you start picking them up with your tweezers, and then so you gather all that up, and then I'm not sure how it works now, but this is how I did it before, because I did it for a state Illinois before. You take those critters and you figure out how many you got, aquatic insects. So you take that up and then you can determine the water quality that you got in that stream. So if you got a whole bunch of leeches and you got a whole bunch of bloodworms, you got some pretty nasty water. But if you got a whole bunch of these other ones that I just described, then you got nice clean water. It's good because it can survive, those insects can survive in there. So now you go around the lake, you go down to Hell's Branch where it comes out of the lake, and you find another area that, and there's more to it, and you measure it off and take the area, but you do your same sample down there. So now if you go down there and you're finding all sow bugs and helgramites and that, and you don't find any leeches or anything, why, everything's wonderful. But if you start finding all kinds of leeches and bloodworms and different types of other leeches and stuff, definitely got a problem, because the good folks ain't there. So it's another way to check water quality, and you do it actually by checking what kind of living organisms it can produce.
What sort of age? Because I'm just thinking about what you're talking about so much about kids being involved. I mean, what ages do you have to be? I mean, is that something you could collaborate with a kid?
Yeah, well, I can honestly say when we did it for a few years when it was sponsored by and I think now it's sponsored by Mississippi River. We had science classes come out and do it with us, which was very productive. I mean, they had a great time. They got their feet muddy and they got to play in the water and learn something too. So it's not rocket science, it's earth science. But it gives you a good idea of what your water quality is in your streams.
So that's part of the collaboration, possibly, too. You worked with some schools in order to set that up.
Yeah.
Well, you've
Yeah.
got that River Watch training planned for this summer, correct?
Right,
That's
June.
collaborative.
yeah.
All right, well, we've hit the 4:15 mark, and I think we're required to go back upstairs, and I have to turn this in, and we're going to share some of the ideas, I think. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, everybody.
It gets people thinking about how do they invest their resources, and you really think about it on sort of a community level. So we have developed that model, and we'll put it out there. So if you know, or you are a Rotary member from another place and you'd like to pursue this, just call us, and we'll try to make that happen. I mentioned before, we have trained 47 facilitators from Joe Davis County and beyond, really, and there are another probably, I think, 35 facilitators nationwide, and so there is a handout on that Watershed game, and it's just a good, effective way to get people involved. So, to our Rotarians from the League of Women Voters, mwah, and here's Kate.
You may not want to go too far because maybe you know how to work this better than I. Okay. Hi, everyone. It's really been a pleasure to be involved with this. And so I'm just going to give a recap of what was captured in the breakout sessions. So at the end of the sessions, we were looking at how is it that we wish to spread the word, how is it that we can collaborate, and what are the different actions that we wish to take. So I want to share with you, because you probably weren't able to go to all 5 of them, what was gathered. So, okay. Are we moving to the next slide, Andy? Oh, great. Okay, so Area 1 was the Apple River Watershed Plan, and so how they decided that they would spread the word is host educational events, publish articles, increase participation through River Watch program, hold regular meetings, share with others. Where are we going?
It's not advancing on the screen.
Okay. Oh. Well, just listen. Social media, and then with the second session, they came up with utilize social media, print media, and the website. Okay, now we've lost.
Yeah, just 2 seconds. 1,001, 1,002.
1,003. Keep changes. Yes, keep the changes. Okay.
Ta-da.
Okay. All right, and then we went to how is it that we can collaborate. So start talking with other partners, use the Watershed game in other communities, bringing the game to high schools. And then in the second group, they had stated use UU Platteville grant to study efforts on cows and water quality, work with the schools on River Watch. Okay, and the actions, flushing less, talking to everyone about the watershed, manage my rain barrel, turn water off more, shower with a friend. Oh, good, Andy, they liked my, my addition. Turn the water off while brushing your teeth. This is one of my pet peeves, that people leave the water running, so added that one as well. And their focus on action was learn more about River Watch. Okay, so cover crop experiment. There, spread the word, social media, Facebook, Twitter, reports on numbers, spread the word about absentee landlords, get the word out. And in their second group, education, share resources, host field days, bring on researchers to share ideas, catalog the data and make sure to use it, talk with friends and farmers, use cover crops on small scale in their gardens. Okay, how to grow collaboration. I'm sorry.
They meant by the absent landlords, the lot of properties are being managed by, say, banks or other groups, to make sure that they understand the value long-term to keep the property productive by using cover.
Right, so there are a number of people out here who own the land, but they have a farmer who is renting the land to farm it for them. Right, so then there may be some of those folks in the Rotary anyway, and so it's good that we share that information with them. Thank you. So grow collaboration, connect the data, learn from Indiana and spread the word. So they had stated that in Indiana they've been using this for a much longer period of time, and why don't we find out what they're doing there? Connect with financial institutions regarding shared risks, so collaborate with the banks. Equipment sharing. And then in the second group, it was create recommendations and share expertise, adapt techniques from other areas, work with other farmers to address similar goals. And then the actions that they decided on was spread the wealth. And in the second group, it was protect the soil, share this information. Farmers are the good guys. So the next group was the Dubuque Watershed Project. And so in spreading the word was symposiums, educational seminars, doing lunch and learns, tours. And then in the second session, the Telegraph Herald is doing a great job of spreading the word, using social media, discuss at HOA meetings, HOA, some? Okay. And grow the collaboration, cost-sharing programs for homeowners, networking. There wasn't anything else that was added. And then focus on action. The Mill Creek put in retention basin. And then on the second session, Iowa has a good watershed group that do something. Illinois has to do a better job with watershed groups. Need to be proactive rather than reactive. Need to generate compost locally and educate on how it can be used. Okay, and so building consensus, taking action before the crisis. Okay, uh-oh, I seem to have lost things. So everyone cares about water, it provides opportunity. Okay, and group number 5, they weren't able to give me a hand, we don't have slides on theirs, so we have information from their last group. So that was flood losses in Illinois. Illinois is a very wet state. Floods are the most common and costly disasters in Illinois. So floods happen every year. Floodmaps.org, digital maps. Center for Neighborhood Technology. Impact of climate change, it's happening. Grow collaboration. There's a floodplain management, going local. Risk identification on the map, National Flood Insurance Program, communities to join the NFIP, and structured flood control. And focus on action. Don't rely on FEMA. Take ownership at local levels. Reflect future conditions. Engage the public. Promoting risk awareness and floodplain regulations. Building protection standards. And that's it from the different groups and what are the different things that we can do to take action. Any other ideas that people have as far as what you personally, leaving from here, are going to be doing as far as an action step that you can be taking? Anybody?
I just want to thank all of our sponsors. We couldn't have done it without you, so take a look at the sign on the...
You want to bring that up here?
Do we have a screen? Yeah. Read all of those. Okay.
So thank you to Rotary, Illinois, the League of Women Voters, East Dubuque Nitrogen Fertilizers, the National Mississippi River Museum, the Public Health Department of Joe Daviess County, the Joe Davies County Soil and Water Conservation District, Joe Davies County Farm Bureau, One Mississippi, Illinois Bank and Trust, Top Notch, CDFG, Baranski, Hammer, Moretta, and Sheehy, Architects and Planners, the Apple River State Bank, and First Community Bank of Galena. Thank you, sponsors. And thank you to all of you to be here, to participate, to become more aware, and to get activated. Thanks.